So before we move on to the book, just wanted to um, go over some of the things we did last week. We essentially started to go through some of the characteristics of, I guess not characteristic, more about like what are the consequences of what happens when I reach the final goal? How does my life change? And we just started to get into that, like how the person would live, what would they do? And those are a lot of questions we have about like, how would our lives change? And, would I stop doing things? What would be my motivations? Why would I even want to do things anymore? Those are all valid questions because, a lot of our motivations are based on an outcome. And when we don't care about the outcome anymore, it's very natural to think about what would I do then, right? If I don't care, if I don't have goals or anything like that. And the answer to that is, you will do things that make you happy and that bring you joy, and that things that where you enjoy the process rather than the outcome. And if we don't know that right now, don't worry, those things will start to come into your life, because that's how, once we start to let go of things that we do out of compulsion, and then and then space opens up in our lives, naturally we start to fill it with things that make us joyful. So that's what ends up happening. Um, so so we kind of went through things, a verse which was, you may live life like how a fool lives their lives, unconcerned, or you may move about and be very active, or you may do nothing, or you may do a lot of work. It all depends on how you look at your life and what are some of the things that are available around you, and what needs to be done. That becomes a way that we live life, and not through any sort of recipe, but just like spontaneously and with more sort of conscious action, which is something is happening around me and now I need to do something about it. And yeah, so you kind of start to flow with life. Cool. So any questions about like stuff that came up last week? Any thoughts before we start the text? Okay. Let me share my screen. So we are, like I think we have about 20, less than 20 verses left, 14 verses actually. So we're pretty much towards the end of the book. And we will sort of have a slight revision towards the end of the book, but now we're sort of entering like what's the outcome and the consequences and what happens. And this is fun because, these are sort of things that we use to compare our experiences, not somebody else's experiences. So, it's like sort of inspiration. We look at these verses as like inspiration, as like, this is what would happen. And if I'm not quite there yet, then, I can then look at some of the previous verses and see what are some of the things I have to do, and what are some of the things that are not, which I'm not changing in my own life, that is not leading me towards this direction. So these are all sort of pointers, which allow us to move in a certain direction. So we are constantly trying to move and flow towards, letting go of stuff in our own lives, destroying vasana, becoming more conscious, becoming more aware of what's happening within us. So that's kind of like, the process, and then the outcome is what is being described here. So let's do verse 54. Would anyone like to do the English today? Or actually, no, the Sanskrit. Would anyone like to do the Sanskrit? No takers. Okay, how about the English?
I can do English.
Okay, thank you, Devi.
Yep.
Okay, so I will do the Sanskrit. Cool. So verse 54. Yallabhana paro labho yatsukhana param sukham yajgyanan aparam jnanam tadbrahmet tyavadharayet.
Realize that to be Brahman, the attainment of which leaves nothing more to be attained, the blessedness of which leaves no other blessing to be desired, and the knowledge of which leaves nothing more to be known.
Okay, so here we're getting again like some sort of like what is the consequence of realizing Brahman? And notice that they've said realize that to be Brahman. So, you know, a lot of I would say like religions or like philosophies give so many different names to uh, the ultimate thing, which is like God, and like, and the word God also seems to be so misunderstood and misused, and there's a lot of I would say political things underneath it. So in the Upanishads, God isn't even a word that's used very often. It's mostly like this pronoun, and you would see a lot of like that and it, and because the moment we give something a physical form or like something that can be like seen in our lives, then we will miss out what the actual meaning is. And so we want to be abstract about it, which is like it cannot be described, it cannot be seen, and it cannot be known as an object, as an external thing. So that's kind of why we say things like that and it, because if we say it is like this great, like, right, in a lot of like in Hindu religion too, there's so many of these gods, and a lot of people just think that that God is the ultimate, even that form is the ultimate, and then people, we tend to kind of get caught up with just the form rather than seeing that a form is just a small manifestation of that. And that here refers to the ground of being, the awareness that we are, and we are a form of that as well, like the physical body when I say we. So everything happens to be sort of a manifestation of that. And what is that here? That here is Brahman. So we use, now we're given a word that Brahman is sort of this word uh, that we can use to describe that. And what happens when we attain it? So if you look at our lives, we, like, what do we want? We want something that can satisfy me. We want to be blessed. We want to know things. Those are sort of our, our human tendencies that we want to explore. We want to like, um, have, achieve things. We want to, feel, have relationships and feel blessed to have relationships and blessed to have the life that we're leading. We want all of these things. And what this verse is saying is that once we realize our true nature, all of those things, we realize we already have them. And there's nothing more that we're going to get in terms of, satisfying us anymore. So the example here is, something that we attain, there's nothing more to be attained. So here you can look at it and saying, how do I feel when I attain things? When I achieve success, when I have, the, you know, the success that I always wanted, and my career is as I thought it would be, or even more than I thought it would be. How would I feel? I would feel blissful. I would feel satisfied. I would feel content. And what this is saying is that that contentment and that satisfaction is already within us. Uh, because when we attain those things that we choose out to attain, what happens? The object of desire and the mind, come in contact, and for a moment, there are no more desires. So our mind feels blissful. And what has happened is that our mind has disappeared for a few moments when we have been enjoying whatever we struggle so much to attain. Once we attain it, we feel very good. And what this is saying is that self is shining through in those moments. Um, so whatever attainment that we actually get is that bliss of the self. Same thing with being blessed. When we feel like we're feeling blessed, what happens? All of our desires, all of our small minute complaints in life, all of that kind of go away, because we feel that, okay, my life is pretty good. I feel pretty blessed, and that blessedness is also because of the self, because our mind is not focusing on all of the things that we don't have, and we're focusing on the things that we do have, right? So when, there's some of the Western psychology talks about, being grateful every single day. Think about the things that you're grateful about, before going to bed, or like when you wake up in the morning, just remember three things that we are all grateful in life. And what that does is that it makes you notice things that are actually good in your life, and puts less energy on the things that you think that we don't have, right? So it's kind of like turning our attention to something better, rather than being in this state of poverty and saying that I don't have this and I don't have that. We're moving our attention to something like, oh, this is what I have, and that's very beautiful. So like that's the sort of subtle um, workings of how that affects our minds. So here, what this is saying is that when we attain, or once we realize that we are already blessed, then no more blessings will change us. It's like trying to pour water into an ocean. Like, it doesn't really affect the ocean that much. There's already so much water there. So that's kind of the idea. And the last thing is, we as humans, we want to know things. We're constantly like trying to have new experiences, read new things, have more knowledge. But what is it through which we know all things? There's some sort of um, divine awareness in us that allows us to know things. And once we know that, then it's like we sort of understand the mechanics of knowing anything else. So that's kind of the idea. What is it? So there's something within us that is pure awareness, that's pure, untouched by anything that is known. And it shines out. It's kind of like, the sun is shining its light. It's shining its light. And because of the light, we can see that it exists, or we can feel that it exists, depending on which sense organ we are using, right? So there is the sense of awareness that's within me, or rather that I am awareness. And because of this awareness, if I'm looking through my eyes, I see stuff. If I'm hearing through my ears, I hear stuff. If I'm touching things, I can be aware that there's some stuff here because my touch is telling me that there is. Or if I'm tasting something, I can be aware that there's something really, amazing tasting. So because of this awareness that I'm able to experience and know things. Um, and uh, let's say I have this deep urge to know something. What would happen when I do know it? For a moment, my mind is no longer has that urge, because that urge has been satisfied. I know things, and then the mind returns back to the self, and and we feel pretty happy that I got to experience something cool, and then your mind is kind of gone for those moments. So same thing is happening in all experiences, that when we achieve whatever we set out to do, our mind drops, and we are pretty happy and we're pretty blissful. So we need to start to see and get familiar with moments when we're really blissful. What is our state of our mind? Moments when we're very upset, what is the state of our mind? And we will start to see that when I'm happy, my mind is quiet. When I'm miserable, my mind is very noisy. So mind is needed to be miserable. That is sort of the TLDR, too lazy, I didn't read version of this. Um, and So, once we sort of start to get familiar with that, we can start to let go of things that don't serve us. Um, and once we start to let go, then those things don't bother us anymore. And our mind gets emptier and emptier and emptier. And once our mind is empty, then the bliss of the self is very easy to access, because, the thickness of the mind is no longer there. And, as our mind it's kind of like the clouds. Right now in California, it's pretty cloudy outside, so you can't see the sun. But that doesn't mean the sun doesn't exist. It's just hidden. Or rather, in this case, I can see the clouds only because of the fact that the sun is shining, right? Because in the night, if it was cloudy, I couldn't even tell it was cloudy, I guess. But now it's cloudy, but it doesn't mean that the sun doesn't exist. The clouds have to dissipate, and the sun is like, oh yeah, the sun, there it is. There's the sun. The same thing with our minds. If our mind is very thick, we feel miserable. If our mind is very thin, we feel blissful. And because we are not right now, we are not the masters of our mind. We can let the mind control how we feel rather than the other way around. So we want to start to get more in control of our minds, and that doesn't mean like in a forceful way. It's actually counterintuitive. Control doesn't mean to uh, put in like sort of not try to think this, not try to think that. It's more about allowing the mind to do whatever it needs to do without getting involved, because our mind is nothing but a bunch of thoughts that we have absorbed, and because those thoughts have energy, they just continue to function, like continue to happen within our minds. And because we like one thought and we don't like the other thought, we try to suppress the things we don't like and we try to think about the things we do like. And because of that, our mind is gone out of whack. And thoughts that we suppress tend to come up, and then we put in more energy to suppress those. So there's this very complicated mess of energy, thought bundle in our mind. And all we have to do, instead of getting in there and trying to untangle it, we just need to step back and watch it, and we will see that this energy will dissipate. It's kind of like um, like a fire burning. That eventually there's a limited amount of fuel in there, and at some point the fuel is going to exhaust. Uh, Even though it may seem like it's never ending, but there is an end. And then that's the analogy here. Any questions about this? Okay, so I think these next three verses are similar in that intention. So let's do the next one. Okay, verse 55. Yad drishtva na param drishyam, yad bhutva na punarbhavaha, yad jnatva na param gyeyam, tad brahmet avadharayet.
Realize that to be Brahman, having seen which nothing more remains to be seen, having become which one is not born again in this world, and having known which nothing remains to be known.
All right, so we're given some more ideas of what happens when we realize who we are. So having seen which, nothing more remains to be seen. So it's the same idea as wanting to know things. So wanting to see things is another sort of desire that we have. I want to see all these different places in this world. I want to experience new things. This is human tendency. And some of it comes out of compulsion, and some of it comes out of just having the opportunity to do it. But here it's talking about the compulsive sort of nature, where I need to travel, I need to do these things, otherwise I'm going to be miserable. And in those moments when we actually do those things, and let's say you're feeling very miserable at work, and I'm saying, and you think that I want to take a vacation because I want to get away, I don't want to deal, I can't, I'm so sick of like this work thing or whatever it is that's in your life, and you want to get away. What happens when we go through that experience, and when we have that vacation, and when we go to the vacation? In the vacation, we have forgotten about our world. We've forgotten about our work life. We've forgotten about all the problems that we have. And in the vacation, I feel blissful. I feel great because my mind is focusing on whatever is in front of me in the vacation, which is maybe I'm in a beach or something and I'm having fun there. But the moment I go back to the world again, the thing starts again. So why? Because we haven't dealt with the fundamental aspect that the mind still has these unexamined beliefs about things things in our life. And here what this verse is saying is that once we realize that we are Brahman, and once we see that this bliss, whenever I feel blissful, that bliss of this self is coming through, and that's always there. When I go to a vacation, when I do the things I love, when I meet my friends, when I do anything that I love, the bliss is, so my mind stops, in the sense my mind is thin in those moments, because I'm not thinking about all the things that are not working out in my life. I'm thinking of only what is in the now. And because of that, it's natural that I feel blissful. You don't have to do anything different. So So, realize that to be Brahman. So whenever we feel blissful, realize that it is that. Um, and then the next idea, which is, having become which, one is not born again. And this is, this is, can be confusing about, birth. Like what does it mean to be born? Are we talking about, you know, past lives? Are we talking about, something else? And, if you don't believe in past lives and all of that, like this can be applied to to our own lives right now in this current life too. So think about, all the different, we all of us here are, at least 20 years old. So, we have had a bunch of experiences. We have had, a childhood which feels like, it was a long time ago. We may have gone to college, which also feels like a different life. So it's almost like each of those things feel like a different life. Um, and um, and it feels like I'm just now not that person anymore. I'm somebody who's completely different, right? Like I was like this really annoying teenager, and then I had these weird ideas in college, and then I had like some experiences in life which changed my beliefs, and like now I'm a different person. So almost feels like in every moment I am being, I'm changing, and there what has changed is just our mind, right? Our mind has changed. It has gotten some new ideas, new experiences that have altered may have altered completely how we live our lives. So, so here what's saying is that once we realize that we are not the mind, that the mind is just things that we are experiencing, and they change based on the experiences we have and based on the past and all these different factors that affect what we end up doing on a day to day. Once we realize we're not that, then whatever the mind throws up, we clearly know we are not that. And here the idea is that the mind is something that is born constantly. So the analogy is that the mind is like a candle. Even though when we light a candle and the candle is glowing or like shining light, it feels like the candle is continuous, right? Continuously the candle exists, but actually, if the scientific explanation of a candle is that in every moment the candle is being born again. Like there's a flame, and there's an oxidation reaction or happening, and candle is reacting with oxygen, and then the flame is being produced constantly. So technically the flame is being born moment to moment to moment to moment. It's not like there is a flame there that is constant, and when the fuel runs out, it's gone. It's like it's moment to moment fuel. It's being created. So that's similar to our mind too. Our mind is actually being created moment to moment. um, and um, so once we realize we are not the mind, uh, then it doesn't affect us anymore. um, so that's kind of the idea. And the other way to think about it is, whatever is born is not you. The body is born. Anything that is physical is something that is born. So this the cup had a birth at some point, because cup did not exist 1,000 years ago. Maybe 10 years ago somebody made the cup, and then when the cup is no longer there because it breaks, or it gets recycled, the cup is gone. So everything physical will have um, a limitation in terms of time, right? Everything physical has a duration in which it exists, and then it doesn't exist, then it exists for a while, and then it doesn't exist anymore. Same thing with our bodies, same thing with our minds. But what this is saying is there's something which is beyond that, which is the substratum, our sense of awareness, that exists beyond the physical, so beyond time. And we can kind of get a sense of that, which is there's something within us that feels ageless. Even though our body is aging, even though I feel older, even though my body feels more weaker, but there's some part of us which always feels like that, young teenager or 18-year-old, or whatever it is, that feels ageless. It feels like if if we sit still enough, we can't really tell how old we are. It's only once we remember and we look at our face in the mirror that we say, oh wow, I'm actually pretty old. But there's this sense of agelessness in us. And that is what that is here. So realize that agelessness, that feeling of agelessness, the thing within us which illumines this world, this awareness, that is ageless, and that never gets born again. Something gets born, which is the body, which is the mind, but the substratum, the context, never gets born again. And don't believe any of this. Get your own, like, look at it for yourself. Let's examine it in our own experience. Examine it in your own meditation and see that there is something within me that is ageless. Or in fact, that I am ageless. The body and stuff is just stuff that appears in this, in this awareness. And then the last one is sort of the same idea again, which is, having known which, nothing remains to be known. So, once I've known this, then there's no compulsiveness to know anything else. So, I'm satisfied. And then whatever happens in my life is, I play with it. And I don't take it that seriously, is what this is saying. So I can have fun with whatever is happening in my life. Any questions about this? Okay. So if this is not making sense, don't worry. It'll come back, and keep doing the practices. Keep turning your attention to who you are. Keep turning your mind, and this will start to become a direct experience. Okay, verse 56. Tirya gurdha vamadha purnam satchitanandam advayam anantam nityamekam yat tad brahme tadvadharayat.
The one, eternal, non-dual, infinite, which pervades all the quarters above, below, and all that which exists in between, which is one of the nature of existence, consciousness, bliss. Realize that to be Brahman.
Okay, so here we are getting a sense of the fact that this thing has no dimension. So, so technically, if you want to get technical, if I ask you, which part of this body, let's say we only consider ourselves to be this body. If I say which part of this body is really you, like we couldn't really point to a place, right? Like this you sort of pervades this entire body. Like I couldn't say that my left hand is more me than my right hand, or my face is more me than my leg. Right? All of this is me. And I would say the idea of me pervades this entire body. Like this body is non-dual in that way, where there's no part of my body which is not me. So that is to the body. And then if we go to our mind, and now if we have we think about stuff, the object that appears in my thoughts. So let's say I'm thinking about this vacation I want to take. I want to go, we haven't gone to it's really gone out in the last few months. We're really thinking about going out somewhere. I want to go to a beach, and I'm thinking about this beach, and the thought about the beach also sort of pervades me, because it's in my mind space, right? And I'm creating the thought, and I'm having that imagination. If I think of a beach, and then I say, actually no, I actually want to go to a place which has like mountains. So I'm now thinking about a mountain. So it's a different thought, but like that thought is not outside of me, right? It's within me. So you can say that even that thought is me. I can think of my friends who are going to accompany me in that trip. So if I think of them, even they are in my thoughts. So even that pervades. I couldn't say that the thoughts of my friends are outside of me. They're still me as well. So whatever I think of in my mind, I pervade all of that, because they cannot, there's no way to say that they're outside of me. So what we're trying to get is that, there is no if you're looking at awareness, if you're looking at the fact that I can illumine stuff, so I'm illuminating things in my mind, I'm illuminating things in this world, there is no difference between me illuminating things in my mind versus me illuminating things in this world. The fact that all of the things, like it be it thoughts, be it physical objects, they are all within my awareness, right? So there's this context of just pure awareness that is there. And in that context, there's this physical body, there's this, this room that I'm in, there's this world that exists. Even the universe, you could say, is in that context. And once we start to see that we are, that awareness, then there's no place where this awareness is not. Wherever we go, that awareness is there. We can talk about, like, philosophically, we can say that, there is some place outside of this universe, right? Like, I guess even science says there's an edge of the universe and there's something beyond the universe. But even the place beyond the universe would need to have awareness, because if we go there, then we can experience that place. So even there is awareness. So there's no place where awareness is not. So what this verse is saying is that once we start to live from a place of pure awareness, then there's no inside and there's no outside. Because, we will see that the entire universe is in awareness. And in this awareness, we can say that there's, different objects. There's like trees, there's plants, there's humans, there's animals, but they're all in awareness. And each of them have the same divine spark that gives them the sense of awareness. So from that standpoint, I couldn't say that my body ends here. Like, why should I say that my body ends only here? I can say that, just because this body is a little bit more closer to me, I think that this is my body, right? Because I experience this all the time. At every moment, this body seems to be there, at least in the waking state, I have this body. But if I start to expand my sense of me, physicality, then I can say that this home is me. Then I can say this, my social circle is me. Then I can keep expanding. There's no reason for me to stop. It's just this unexamined belief that we all have that this body is me. And once we start to expand, then there is no inside and then there's no outside. Then this whole universe just becomes me. And and then just like how I couldn't say that my left hand is more me than my right hand, then same way I couldn't say that this other person is more me than me, or rather this other person's body is more me than this body. It just so happens that I experience this body a little bit more than somebody else's body. Does that make sense? Any questions? And what is the nature of that? So that's the same thing, that we come back to the same idea that, the nature of it is existence. What is it that makes me feel that I'm alive? What is it that makes me conscious of this world? What is it that allows me to feel bliss? It is the self. It is Brahman. So that was this verse.
So these are not day-to-day practices, right? It's just like an understanding.
Yeah, so these are sort of, I would say, scales that we can say. Like, let's say we feel, I have realized the self. If we do feel that way, we can go back to the book and we can read this verse and we can say, if I read this, is this my direct experience? And if it is, then yes. Then yeah, if you can relate to this and you can be like, yes, this is true. This is true for me. I am looking at my own experience and I'm saying this is true for me. That's kind of how we want to read these verses. Not, yeah, so you're right. This is not a practice that is providing. It's more about like, what is the consequence of this work? Does that make sense?
Yep, cool. Thank you.
Thanks for that question. Any other thoughts? Okay, let's do 57. Ata dvayava vrittirupena vedante lakshate dvayam akhandanandamekam yat tad brahme tyavadharayet.
Realize that to be Brahman, which is non-dual, indivisible, one, and blissful, and which is indicated in Vedanta as the immutable substratum. Realize after the negation of all tangible objects.
Cool. So here, we're given, maybe this is a process. We're given an insight into what the process was. So, in the beginning of the book and in the middle of the book, we were given this process of neti neti, which is not this, not this. So we start to negate things that we are not, because we can never see something that we are, because it is through that things are seen. So it's like if you try to see our eye, if you're trying to prove that we can see, we have to remove everything that the eye actually illumines, right? So if I have to say, I want to see my eye, I have to remove everything that is not my eye. So I have to remove this door, I have to remove this wall, I have to remove this painting. Once everything is removed, the eye will start to will not show me anything. And the idea is in that moment, I will see that because of the fact that I have eyes, all of this is actually shown. And once my focus on all of this is no longer there, my eye is illumining nothing, right? The eye is still active. It's just that there's nothing there to be seen because I've removed everything in my vision. And then when things come back, and then you see, oh, it's because of this, my ability to see, that I can sort of, all of this stuff appears. So that's kind of the same idea, which is we are trying to see that, have a pure experience of this awareness. Right now, our experience of awareness is of things. Like I'm aware of my body, I'm aware of my mind, I'm aware of this physical world, I'm aware of my thoughts. All of those things are sort of in my awareness. And because there's so many things going on, I'm not able to see that I am awareness itself. There's all these things like kind of taking my attention bit by bit, and my mind and my attentive faculty is too scattered to be able to notice it. So the process we're given is negate. You're not, don't pay attention to this physical object right now. Don't pay attention to this sensation on this body you're having right now. Don't pay attention to the thought. Don't pay attention. And it's not like don't think about it, it's don't pay attention, which is, put your attention to something else. And because we do that, then automatically our attention to something which we don't want to pay to kind of dissipates. So we say, turn your mind, to the self, or like try to notice the gap between the thoughts. Just see when a thought arises, when a thought ends. So we are paying attention to something else. We're not paying attention to the theme of thinking. We're paying attention to the mechanics of the thinking. We're like, okay, now the thought is we don't care we don't really care what the thought is. At least we're trying to get to that place. Maybe the story is too enticing, or it has too much energy that we kind of jump in. But what we're trying to do is, once we start to get a little bit more stable in terms of our ability to just notice these thoughts, then we can easily start to like let go of them. By noticing that there are these gaps which occur from when one thought ends and another begins. And once those gaps start to widen, what this verse is saying, we will start to notice that there's this immutable substratum, this base. And it's not a physical object. It is this base, which is just pure consciousness or pure awareness. And it's immutable because it doesn't change. Objects that thoughts and stuff come out of this, and that seems to be different. So there is this feeling that change is happening around me, but that's only of the physical stuff. The substratum never changes. And what's the nature of that substratum? It is indivisible, it is one, it's blissful. And those are sort of the the consequences of realizing that substratum, or getting a glimpse of that substratum. So there may be moments, we've been doing this course for some time now. Some people may be having the experience that we meditate when our mind sort of, if we are getting our mind is getting the ability to like let go of the stories of this world. When I'm in my meditation seat, I'm at least able to stop thinking about work, the worries that I have in work, worries that may I have in my personal life. At least I'm starting to get a little bit more, I would say, uh, focused on what is happening in the now, and not live in my mind so much. If we're starting to get there, we may start to get moments, like maybe it may be a moment where like it just feels good, and then again some thought comes up, and then we may get distracted. But there may be moments now where we may start to feel a little bit blissful. And if that is happening, this is what the verse is saying, is that that we are starting to pay attention to the immutable substratum. And once our mind pays attention to that immutable substratum, the mind is blissful, because the immutable substratum is blissful. Um, and that's kind of what is going on if those experiences are starting to happen to you. Any questions about this? Okay, let's do the next one. Akhandananda rupasya tasyananda lavakshitaha brahmadhyatasya ratmena bhavantyananditnokhilaha.
Deities like Brahma and others taste only a particle of the unlimited bliss of Brahman and proportionately enjoy their share of that particle.
So here, this is getting, since this book is written from a Hindu context, deities in like the Hindu religion are Brahma, and Brahma is, and others. So Brahma is essentially, I think he's the creator god, and all of these people are limited beings where they, I guess actually no, Brahma is like one of the three major gods, and his power is that he can create things. So we all have this Brahma in us, which is our ability to think about stuff, our ability to create ideas and build things, and like just think of something and like pursue that, and that just happens, right? So we have this sort of nature in us which is like Brahma. And then others here are like, so there's a sort of hierarchy of like gods, depending on like how much power they have, or how much I would say good works they have done in life. Kind of like similar to this sort of, I would say, Christian or like Jewish or like Islamic sort of thing of like, if you do lots of good work in life, you will get to like heaven, and then in heaven you will enjoy like, it's going to be like a utopian society. So you'll get whatever you want, you will get. But then based on like your actions in this earth realm, you gain certain like things, and then you get to enjoy them in heaven. That's kind of like the moralistic commandments that exist across all religions, which is do good works in this world, and then you will enjoy something later, right? So even if we take all of those things to be true, what this is saying is those people enjoy only a taste, or only a particle of that unlimited bliss that is within all of us today. And why? Because those kinds of, that kind of heaven, which is based on the work that you do, is limited, right? So if the theory is that if I do good works in this life, and then I get to enjoy something in a future life, or in a future world or whatever, then based on how much effort or how many good works I do is directly proportional to how much I will enjoy in heaven. If I do only 10 small actions that were good in this world, then I will enjoy like a tiny piece of heaven. But if I do 1,000, then I would get a little bit more. So that is proportional, and that's limited, because how long will that 10, it's like currency, right? Like how long will that currency last? It'll only last until like whatever, it runs out. And so that bliss is only a particle because it's limited. And what this is saying is the bliss that is available to us on a moment to moment basis is unlimited, because it never ends. It's only that, our attention goes to the limited, where we say I want happiness, I want conditional happiness. It's like, I'm only happy when this happens in my life. I'm miserable when this is not happening in my life. Those are all conditions we create on our own self. And we try to struggle, and we struggle to achieve them, or whatever it is that we want to achieve in our life, or we want to change in our life. We struggle, and there's a sense of struggle. And during the struggle, because we are so outcome oriented, that we are only focused on the outcome, we forget about the process, that even the process can be blissful. So this bliss is available moment to moment to moment, and it's unlimited in that sense, because there's no moment when you are not, I'm always me, right? So if there is bliss in me, which is, and if I'm always me, then there is unlimited potential for this bliss to manifest, or for this bliss to be available. So there's no reason for us to say that I'm miserable. In theory, we can only say that I'm miserable when we have a false understanding of who we are, or we have a false belief that I want something to be different than what it is. Because even when that thing does, let's say I want something to be different, and I struggle and I put in a lot of effort to make that what I want it to be, in those moments also I will feel the bliss of myself, because what has happened in those moments, the struggle has ceased. And when what does struggle mean? My mind is just like, going like up and down, and um, that ends when I get what I want. So it always boils down to that, which is, if my mind is noisy, I'm miserable. If my mind is quiet, I'm blissful. And my mind is only noisy because I think I have a firm belief in some idea, in something that the world needs to be different than it is. Either the world needs to be different, or I need to be different. Only those two things are the outcome of not liking something. If I don't like something, I either want to change the thing outside, or I want to change something within me. And then there's a struggle. So I guess one thing that could be misunderstood with this is that, what is wrong in wanting to change the world? What is wrong in doing that? There's nothing wrong in doing whatever you want to do. All I'm saying is that do it without the sense of struggle. There is a possibility to do things without a sense of struggle. And when we do things without a sense of struggle, then the bliss is available all the time. So that was what this verse was. Any questions about this? Okay, let's do the next verse. Tadyuktamakhilam vatsu vyavaharasta tadvindaha tasmat sarvagatam brahma shire sarpi rivakhile.
All objects are pervaded by Brahman. Also, all actions are possible because of Brahman alone. Therefore, Brahman permeates everything as butter permeates milk.
Yeah, so this was kind of the idea that was given earlier, which is there is this awareness and the substratum in our own subjective experience. We always have to look at this in our subjective experience, because the moment we get out of our subjective experience, then all of this becomes an idea, and ideas can be confusing. Look at it always from, what is my subjective experience of this world, of these objects? All of these objects are permeated by my awareness, right? If I'm not aware of something, it's invisible to me. It's only that let's say I think about something, that's also something that is permeated by my awareness, right? So let's say you can have a argument and say, oh, I'm not thinking about something, I'm not thinking about my let's say my job right now, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. That is true, but even when we think about our jobs, that is also permeated by my awareness, right? So whatever I'm experiencing on a moment to moment basis, everything is permeated by this awareness. Without this awareness, you couldn't be aware. So like I could tell you there is this, place in a galaxy which has people. We couldn't know. Like it has to be within your awareness for us to experience it. So, so that's what this is saying, is that all the objects in this world have the substratum as this awareness, this Brahman, the self. And in that self, all these objects exist. And then, all actions also happen because of Brahman, which means that this Brahman is the life principle in this universe, and not just like life, which is like organic life, but you can look at the sun, you can look at the moon. All of them are sort of in movement, and all of the movement is also happening because of this Brahman, this force. And there's this force within us that wants us to do things, wants us to experience things, and all of that is because of the touch of the Brahman. And the analogy here is that, I guess butter permeates milk. So, this is written like a long time ago. So the analogy is that when you churn milk, you get butter. So it means that there's butter in milk already, which has to be churned out. So that's kind of what and once the butter is churned out, you can see that there is this butter, and it always was in milk. It's just that we didn't notice that, because of the other things other than butter in the milk, it hid the butter from us. So similarly, what we're doing is the process that we are undertaking is we're churning our minds. We're trying to get rid of all these false ideas. We're churning. And what's going to happen at some point is the butter is going to rise up. Once the butter rises up, then the butter is available at all times, because we cannot unsee. It's kind of like the same idea of the snake and the rope. Once we see something is, the snake was a rope, we can never see it as a snake again. And that's the same idea. This world will completely change for us because we will never see it for what we used to see it before, which was, all the things was real in some way, and things had to be a certain way. And if they were not, there was a sense of struggle. That's going to disappear. And that doesn't mean we won't do things. It'll just mean we will do things without a sense of struggle. We will still do the things we love. So, whatever you love, you will still do those things. And maybe more things will come into our lives because, we'll start to open up space for things to come in. Okay, that was verse 59. Any questions about that verse? Okay, let's do verse 60. Ananvasthulam hrisvam dirgham ajmaya vyayam arupa gunavarnakyam tadbhramyet yavadharayet.
Realize that to be Brahman, which is neither subtle nor gross, neither short nor long, without birth or change, without form, attributes, color, and name.
Right, so here again, we're getting some characteristics or attributes of Brahman, which is actually the lack of attributes. So in Vedanta, we kind of are given this idea of the pair of opposites, which is, things which are opposing, subtle or gross, short or long. These are just opposite things. And all the objects in this world are in these two extremes, right? Like every, let's say, tree is tiny or it's really tall, right? And it's within these dimensions that all the trees exist. So it's neither short nor long. So it's saying it's anything that is an attribute, anything that can be said is short or anything that can be said is long, those are attributes of physical things. And this is saying that it's neither that. Like it has no physical dimension. So it's not short nor it's long. it can be a point, or it's like, it's beyond dimension. And then the other idea is that it's neither subtle or gross. So, subtle here refers to, our thought, our mental space is more subtle than this physical space. Water is more subtle than ice. So those are all qualities of, again, the physical, and Brahman is not that either. Birth and change. So birth here is like, objects come out of nothing, they exist for a while, they go into nothing. And same thing can be said about our thoughts. We think of stuff, comes out of nothing. What is the material of the thoughts that we just thought about? It is Brahman in that sense. So, but the thought itself is bound by time. Thoughts only exist for a certain amount of time and some duration, and then they go away. So it's neither of the thoughts. So this is kind of like we're giving the practice that we were, told to do, to kind of see that if anything has physical properties, it is not Brahman. It is that context, the context in which all of these things appear. That is Brahman. So, you can think of like when we are thinking about stuff, there is this mind space, right? There's this space in our mind in which all of our thoughts appear, in which all of our memories appear, which all of our ability to plan for the future appear. And that space is the context. So similarly, there's a mind space, there's also this physical space, and that space tends to, space is just a word that we use, but it's a sense of like vast, empty awareness, or, like some people talk about like the sky of awareness. So these are all like language and poetry that we can use to describe an experience, but, words are always going to come short. So we want to start by, so we can either, do positive, try to understand it by saying it is like this, it is like this, it is like this, which will give us hints about what it is like. And then when we can do the other thing, which is we can say it is not this, because since it's not something that we're going to experience as a physical object and say, aha, that is what it is. That's never going to happen because it's not a physical object. So we can learn by two ways, or we can learn to recognize it by two ways. One is by negation. So we can keep negating things. We can keep negating things until we come to a point where there's nothing left to negate. Once we come to that point, whatever remains, that is it. So that's one way to do it. And the other way to do it is by describing what it is. So, we can say it is, it is like the sky. It is like the mind space. It is, just pure awareness. Those are like positive ways to describe it. And we kind of need to do both together because, otherwise it gets a little frustrating. So I think, this verse is essentially doing the negation, which is, it is not, it doesn't have any form. It doesn't have any time associated to it. It is without attributes, without color. Like, what is the color of you? You're colorless in that way. Color is only to the skin, right? Even name is only to the body. I actually don't have any names. It's convenient to call somebody with a name, but actually you don't have a name. So that's kind of how we want to think about this. Any questions about this verse? Okay, let's do one more. Yad bhasa bhasyate karti bhasyair tu na bhasyate yena sarvamidam bhati tad brahmet vyadharayet.
That by the light of which the luminous orbs like the sun and the moon are illumined, but that which are not illumined by their light, realize that to be Brahman.
Right, so here, we may get a question, which is, I am awareness, but do I need another awareness to illumine this awareness? Like, are there two awarenesses that exist within me? And, if we really analyze ourselves and say, and we look at how we experience things, like there's only one awareness all the time. That same awareness is illumining my computer screen right now, the same awareness is illumining my thoughts, the same awareness is illumining this book I'm looking at. There's only one awareness, and it can illumine different things based on what is in front of me or where my attention is. So my attention, even though I could be in this physical world, I could be lost in my thoughts because my attention is completely on my thoughts. But the same awareness is illumining my thoughts too, and the same awareness illumines the physical too. Same awareness illumines my emotions. All of it, different levels and different experiences, but it's the same awareness. And the idea is that, like the sun is shining, and the analogy here is the sun is shining, but in order to see the sun, we don't need another light to see the sun. Like it is because of the sun that there is light, right? So if somebody says, how do you see the sun? It's because of its own light. Like, do you need to shine a torchlight on the sun to be able to see it? No, because the sun itself is light. So the same idea is that we ourselves are awareness, and we don't need another awareness to illumine ourselves. So if I ask the question to you, are you today? Like most of our answers would be like, yes, I am me. And then I could ask you, how do you know you're you? And the answer could be, well, I know because, I have this is something within me that allows me to know things. I don't know what, I can't quite describe it in language, but something within me that allows me to see, allows me to perceive, allows me to hear. It's there. I'm always aware. I may be confused about, I'm feeling, tired. I'm feeling sad. I'm feeling happy. Or I may be really alert. I may be really dull. All of these, I may be feeling these sensations, but I'm always awareing. I'm always illumining even those sensations. Even when I'm feeling the most shittiest, I'm still aware that I'm feeling shitty. So there's always this sense of awareness available all the time. And I don't need anything else. Like there's no point in any part of my life that I've experienced where I have not been aware of how I'm feeling, right? We have all experienced, no matter what has happened in our lives, we have always known that fact. So in every moment, the Vedanta is shining, that I know, I exist, I shine. I may be shining really crappy things, but it's always there. There's no point where I was not aware. So, so we don't need another awareness to illumine your awareness. So that's the idea here. Does that make sense? Okay. We're chugging along pretty quickly. All right, let's do the next verse. I think we have another 5 minutes. Swayam antarbhivyapya bhasayan khilam jagat brahma prakashate varhin pratapapya sapindivat.
Pervading the entire universe within and without, the Supreme Brahman shines by itself like the fire that permeates a red-hot iron ball and glows by itself.
Okay, so here again we're getting the same idea that we pervade everything. So the sense of awareness, and we always have to think of like it's talking from the sense of the Atman and the Brahman that pervades this entire universe. The sense of awareness. And when that happens, there's no inside and there's no outside, because inside and outside can only exist when there is a boundary, right? Within the boundary, you're either inside the boundary or you're outside the boundary. So if I only consider myself to be physical, then anything which is within the physical is me. Anything which is outside of this physical thing is not me. But once that gets obliterated and that's gone, if you're only the sense of awareness, then there is no boundary anymore. And when there's no boundaries, there's no inside and there's no outside. There's only inside, or there's only outside, right? Like, so the sense, the wall has broken. And when that happens, so this says the Supreme Brahman shines by itself. So, how is it shining? Because it is by which things are seen. So it shines by itself. It doesn't need anything else. Just like the fire, shines light on things. We don't need another light to see the fire. Similarly, we don't need another awareness to see our own awareness. That's the nature. Nature of myself is to be shining, and I'm illuminating stuff. And then here it says that, like the analogy is that if I take if I take an iron ball and I put it in the fire for some time, and if I take it out, it may, since it's absorbed some of the heat of the fire and it's become really hot, it can become red, and it can appear that that the iron is like shining by itself. It's no longer in the fire, and it can, let's say for 10 minutes outside, it's continuously glowing. It may appear that the iron ball is glowing by itself, but what has happened, it's borrowed some of the heat of the fire, and for a moment it just appears that it is like, moving and shining and all of that, and it glows by itself. So that can be the false understanding. So here, the mind and our bodies, they are all sort of taking the heat or taking this energy or whatever it is from Brahman, from ourself, and it appears that my body is alive, that my mind is alive, that this world is alive, but it's all a temporary borrowed quality of the self. The self is the only thing that is alive, and it's alive all the time. And then the body borrows this thing from the self, and it appears to move, appears to do all of that, and it appears for a moment, for some amount of time, that this that it is what is alive. But actually what has happened, just like the iron has borrowed the quality of the fire and it appears to be hot for some time, similarly the body and the mind, all of that just borrow qualities of the self. The self is alive. The physical stuff like the mind and the body, they are all inert, and they cannot shine by themselves. The mind cannot exist outside of you, right? It is something that is that you give it power. You have the ability to give the mind more power. You have the ability to like end the mind. So some mind is something that is a consequence of you, of the self. So it cannot exist by itself. But the self can exist by itself because it needs nothing else. It just shines and illumines whatever is whatever comes in its path. So that's kind of the idea of this verse. Maybe we have time for one more verse, or if anyone has any questions. Does that make sense? So we are, in this last few verses, we got like, we're talking about what Brahman is, what it is not, what it is, and why does it exist? How does it shine? How is it that so that's like, we're getting a sense of what its quality is. Its quality is to shine on stuff, to know things, to illumine stuff for us in our experience. It's constantly happening, moment to moment to moment to moment. And if we can just sit back and not get too involved in what is being illumined, but just notice the process of illumination, then we will see that it's constantly happening. It's so that that's why cannot we just sit back and just be because of vasana. So that's like the work that we have to do. Vasana are these like impressions that take us away, that that some thought comes up and then we just dive straight into that thought and saying, I have to think about this now, rather than just like it's like people watching. You're just sitting. LA is like a great city to people watch. Like you're sitting in LA, people are going by, and you're just watching, not going in and like getting grabbing some one person who is like walking by. You're just observing, and just feeling fascinated by that. But then what does that do? It allows us to notice that we are just purely this being that can illumine things. And and not be touched by anything that is illumined. And that gives us great power, because then we can act without feeling scared about the consequences of any outcome, because no outcome is going to touch us. We will illumine the bad outcome, we will illumine the things that we don't like or whatever, but it'll never touch us really, because we are always sitting on the bench observing this world. And it may appear that we get entangled even in moments, and let's say we get entangled, let's say something doesn't work out and we feel very miserable, all of that, but even the misery is being illumined in that moment. So the self is never touched, even in moments when it's painful, it feels like the world is ending, there's all kinds of stuff going on, and it may feel crazy, and we can participate as well and feel all of the emotions that come with participation, which is when you are participating in something that is painful, you're going to feel pain. If you're participating in something that's joyful, you'll feel joy. But none of it really touches us on a deep level. It's certainly an experience that moves through us, but it's always that we are sitting on that bench, knowing that things flowing by never touch us. And that's what we want to get to. Or at least that's what this work is saying, that is who you are actually. It's not even like we want to get to. We just need to realize that whatever this world is happening, it never really touches the core of our being. It may touch the mind, it may touch the body, but the core of our being is never touched. And maybe that's a good place to stop today. And we only have 6 more verses, and then so the next class is going to be a funner class, I would imagine. We'll have some more space for questions. But does anyone have any questions? If this is not making sense, it's fine, because we are towards the end of the book, and this is a very short book, and this is this work cannot be done in 12 weeks. It takes longer time, but this is a good sort of, it's like we've gotten a good map of this work, and now we can sort of dive into what are some of the aspects of my life where I need to work on, and these are the tools that we can apply on a day-to-day. This is one tool. There's meditation is one way, and then staying present on a moment to moment is another way, but that's not always possible. So there's other tools that we're potentially going to learn, and if you're interested, I'm going to do the Karma Yoga course at some point, and that's going to give us some other set of tools, which is how do I act in this world without being touched by what I'm doing, which is also very similar to this, but slightly different perspective. And that's the work we have to do, which is we cannot not act, because our bodies, so long as we have bodies, so long as we are in we have this physical body, we have to do something. We have to act. We have to, what else are we going to do? So how do we learn to do things without a sense of creating more bondage or creating more vasana, creating more attachments, but yet completely participate in this world? Do all the things that we love, but without the sense of ownership. Yeah, I think that's a good way to phrase it. Like we need to give up the idea that we own things, because everything in this world is temporary. And the moment we say I own this, then there is this deep sense of loss when it goes away from our lives. And in reality, we own nothing. If we look at a mountain and we enjoy it, a thought of ownership doesn't even arise, right? How can I own a mountain? But that doesn't mean we don't enjoy it. I look at a sunset every day and it's beautiful, but the thought of ownership doesn't even arise, or the thought that this is my sunset doesn't even arise. But we do that constantly to all the things that we experience. And it could be very small things. It could be like, tiny objects in my life, or it could be relationships. It could be anything. We have the sense of ownership. And because of the sense of ownership, we get entangled in them. But if we can just enjoy those things as experiences, moment to moment, and then we will not get entangled. And we will be more involved because, our relationship is not going to, I guess our ideas about the relationship are not going to affect the way we view the current experience. And it'll make us more effective, it'll make us more present, it'll make us, I think it's going to make us a lot more capable of handling any situation. Cool. We have about like 15 minutes before left, so maybe we can do a meditation. Or does anyone have any thoughts about anything that we covered today? Any ideas? Anything that may have come up? Any questions? Everyone is in contemplation. Okay, let's do a meditation. Okay, so everyone, if you're not sitting, please sit in a comfortable position. You can close your eyes, or if you're feeling sleepy, you may leave it open. And just make sure your back is straight, you're sitting upright. Usually helps to sit upright, especially when you're feeling sleepy. It's very easy to fall asleep. So just notice if your neck and back is aligned and your head is resting on your shoulders. If there's any strain on your neck, maybe you can move forward or backward to kind of adjust yourself. Start by taking a few deep breaths. On the exhale, just let go of any physical tension that we're holding on to. Just imagine that all of that tension is being released on that exhale. And with the inhale, we're absorbing fresh energy from this world, this universe. And it's recharging our body. And on the exhale, we're letting go of all the toxins, all of negative energy. Let's do another deep breath. Imagine all of the good stuff coming in. On the exhale, all of it has gone. So this is a great way to start our meditation by just breathing consciously, a few breaths. This allows us to settle into our bodies. And we can notice that we have bodies. It's pretty cool to be able to breathe. The fact that we're connected to this world, the air that is coming in is coming from someplace outside. We are sort of participating constantly with this world. And you can just start to notice that the breath is occurring in the physical level. If you're thinking about something, thoughts are going on, breath is still going on. If we can feel any sensations in our body, the sensation of maybe the chair or the seat that you're sitting on, sensations of your clothes, on your skin. You can notice that we are feeling an emotion. Just notice it. No need to try to change anything. If you're feeling sad, just notice that. If you're feeling tired, just notice. Feeling joyful, notice that. Not giving any extra energy to that experience, just noticing. Thinking about stuff you gotta do today, just noticing. The mind is in planning mode. If you're thinking about past memory, just notice that as well. Mind is in replay mode. Without getting involved. Start to see that if thoughts are appearing, come out of nothingness. They just appear and then exist for a while, and then it's gone. And then a new thought appears. Moment to moment, these thoughts are appearing. And moment to moment, they disappear. There may be no moment when there's a lack of a thought, and that's okay. But we just want to notice that these thoughts appear moment to moment. I may think of something, and then the next moment I may think of something completely different. And then I may think about thinking about that. So all these different thoughts are happening. But they're happening moment to moment. The thought that you had a moment ago is not available in this moment. And the thought that you had this moment will not be available in the next moment. But all these thoughts are appearing in this mind space that we have. See if you can notice the context in which these thoughts are appearing. See if you can get a sense of this vast space, this feeling that there's the sky. In the sky, these thoughts are flowing, moving around, kind of like clouds in the sky. They're just there, doing their thing. And the sky is always available for us to notice. We don't have to create it. We don't have to suppress something for it to exist. It's always there in the background. If you can get a sense of the space of awareness, that is yourself. Space is empty. What are the characteristics of that space? Start to notice that. Does it have any color? Does it have any length? If your mind is focused on thoughts, it's okay. Keep noticing that without getting involved in the story or the theme of the thoughts. Just notice that thinking is happening, but keep trying to bring our attention to the context in which this thinking is happening. If you're feeling physical sensations in the body, that's okay too. Even those sensations, see if you can notice what is the context of those sensations. See if you can notice the location of the sensation, some location in the space. Slowly bring your attention back to objective reality. And whenever you're ready, you can open your eyes. Let's end the class with a chant. Share my screen again. Feel free to join or just listen. It's fine too. Yogarato va Bhogarato va Yogarato va Bhogarato va Sangarato va Sangavihina Sangarato va Sangavihina Yasya Brahmani Ramate Chitta Yasya Brahmani Ramate Chitta Nandati Nandati Nandatyeva Nandati Nandati Nandatyeva Nandati Nandati Nandatyeva. So hopefully this verse, now when you read it, makes a lot more sense than what it did in the beginning of the course. So we want to learn how to revel in the self. So it doesn't matter if you're in the world, doesn't matter if you're in our homes, doesn't matter if you're doing yoga, if it doesn't matter if you're consuming in this world, whatever it is that we're doing, if we can revel in the self, which is available to us at all times, because that's who we are, we can enjoy. Only she knows how to enjoy, really knows how to enjoy, because unconditional enjoyment. So that's it for this class. We have another, I think only 6 verses left, so we should have some time for some discussions in the next class. But if anybody has any questions, any thoughts, anything that you may want to talk about, I'm here. Happy to discuss privately, happy to hang out after class as well. But read the commentary as well and keep doing your own practices, because that's also such a critical aspect of this. This work is just meant as an inspiration and as a way to start our journey, but the work has to be done in our own lives and by ourselves. Like nobody else can do it for you and for me, for us, right? And if we're gonna get what we put in. And some people require less amount of work, some people require more. It just depends. There's no right or wrong answer. But if we are earnest about it, results are bound to happen. And at some point, the process itself starts to become enjoyable, and it just doesn't feel like work or effort. It doesn't feel like effort anymore. And I think that's the with any new thing, that's always the problem, which is like the initial inertia, and we need to just get past that. And that can only happen if we make it a habit, or have some time every single day that we spend to doing some of this work. So I hope everyone is doing that. And if you're not, that's okay as well, but just keep thinking about trying to do that. But if anyone has any thoughts or questions and stuff, can hang out after. But that's the end of this class.
Thank you, Puneet.
Thanks, Puneet.
Thank you.
Thank you, Puneet. You're great.
Thank you.
Puneet.